Waitress warns Billionaire about his friend. Next day, a luxury car shows up at her door. Ava Martinez never imagined her life would change with a simple act of concern. She was just a waitress at the Orchid Room, a luxurious glass-walled restaurant overlooking the bustling streets of Midtown Manhattan. Night after night, she served the city's elite film stars, tech magnates, and big-name financiers without ever stepping beyond her station. But the night she overheard a delicate piece of information and dared to warn billionaire Jonathan Blackwood about his so-called friend, everything changed. The following morning, a gleaming black Bentley pulled up outside her tiny apartment. And with it came the promise of secrets revealed, destinies entwined, and a debt of gratitude neither of them could ignore. Ava Martinez had worked at the Orchid Room for just over 3 years. The establishment was legendary. It was the go-to venue for city powerhouses to discuss deals, romances, and betrayals, all while sipping the finest wines and sampling delicate masterpieces crafted by an award-winning chef. People said the Orchid Room was where real power moved, overshadowing even the boardrooms of Manhattan. It was a Thursday night when Ava's world began to shift. Thursdays were usually calmer than the hectic weekend nights. She knew the regulars by name, face, and temperament. That night, Jonathan Blackwood, reclusive real estate mogul known for turning entire city blocks into architectural marvels, had come in with a small party. At first glance, it was a standard gathering for men, all business associates wearing tailored suits and polite but distant smiles. Ava recognized Jonathan's quiet dignity. He seldom raised his voice, but people hung on his every word. Over the years, she had observed him graciously tip staff and greet the chef on special occasions, but always from behind a fortress of composure. His companion that evening was someone new, tall with a neatly trimmed beard and eyes that roamed the room with restless energy. This man introduced himself to staff as Alec. Right away, Ava felt something was off about him, an intangible sense that he wore his charm like a mask. While Jonathan was the epitome of elegant detachment, Alec seemed too eager to blend in and too casual with private details. Ava's instincts whispered that Alec wasn't the pure friend he claimed to be. Maybe it was the way Alec flashed cunning smiles or tried too hard to appear friendly with the staff. As the dinner wore on, Ava busied herself with the usual tasks, bringing out the main courses, refilling wine glasses, and discreetly checking on the party's comfort. Her second-hand black flats squeaked against the polished floor as she approached their table to gather empty plates. That was when she heard it, a snippet of conversation so candid it made her cheeks burn. Alec had leaned toward a man named Charles, whispering in a tone of conspiratorial excitement. "He thinks this is going to be a simple investment," Alec murmured, glancing quickly at Jonathan, who had stepped away for a phone call. "Just wait until the controlling shares swing our way. I'll bleed him first." Ava froze. She couldn't see Charles's face entirely, but from the small flicker of his expression, she guessed he was on board with whatever Alec was planning. The pair must have assumed the waitress was out of earshot, or maybe they just weren't paying attention to the staff. In that split second, Ava felt a chill. Whatever they were plotting, it was definitely not in Jonathan's best interests. She carried the empty dishes away with her heart pounding. Should she say something, it was none of her business. She was just a waitress. But Jonathan had always been generous and courteous, leaving her a smile and a gracious word on the nights she served him. Her conscience roiled inside. Eventually, she made a choice she would try to warn him. Toward the end of the evening, Jonathan lingered at the bar for a moment, while his companions settled the bill. He was wearing a crisp navy suit that made him look like a statue chiseled from midnight. Ava, who had finished her shift, caught him looking at his phone with an unreadable expression. She approached slowly, her nerves knotted up. "Mr. Blackwood," she said softly. He turned politely, arching an eyebrow. "Yes, miss. Ava," she supplied. "I've served your table before." "Of course. Good evening, Ava. Is there something I can help you with?" She swallowed, scanning the room to make sure Alec and Charles were nowhere near. "I don't want to intrude," she began, "but I heard something earlier tonight, and I feel I should let you know." His brow furrowed with polite concern. "Go on." She lowered her voice. "I overheard Alec and Charles discussing some plan that might work against you. Something about controlling shares and—" She saw the flicker of tension in his face there, and gone in an instant. He regained his composure quickly, but she noted the subtle tightness around his mouth. "Thank you for telling me. I appreciate your honesty, Ava." Then in a gentle voice tinged with urgency, he asked, "Are you certain about what you heard?" Ava hesitated. She had no proof besides the words that reached her ears. "Yes," she said, quietly determined. "I'm certain. Please be careful." Something flashed in Jonathan's eyes, a mixture of gratitude and determination. He nodded in understanding. Before he could respond, Alec and Charles drifted back toward them. Ava felt her pulse spike. Jonathan, elegant as ever, simply offered Ava a silent nod of thanks, then turned to greet his friends with a smooth, unaffected smile. Still, Ava knew a line had been crossed. She had potentially stepped into a realm far beyond a waitress's usual boundaries. As she left the restaurant that night, she couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that her life might never be the same. The next morning, Ava woke in her tiny apartment on the Lower East Side with a crushing sense of second-guessing. Had she done the right thing by warning Jonathan? Maybe he already knew what was going on. Maybe she had just exposed herself to trouble. She resolved to stop worrying, telling herself that she'd likely never hear from Jonathan or Alec again. She was in the middle of a hasty breakfast, instant oatmeal, and day-old coffee when she heard a rumble of an engine outside. A flurry of honks followed. Ava rushed to the window, parted the worn blinds, and nearly dropped her coffee mug in shock. Parked in front of her building was a gleaming black Bentley Continental GT, shining beneath the morning sunlight like a polished onyx jewel. A tall, well-dressed chauffeur stood by the car, checking his watch as if searching for someone. A moment later, there was a buzz at her intercom. Ava's heart thundered in her chest. Could it be? She pressed the button. "Hello." "Good morning," came a polite voice. "I have a delivery for Ms. Ava Martinez." Her thoughts spiraled. Delivery. She quickly slipped on a pair of sandals and hurried downstairs. Stepping onto the curb, she stared incredulously at the waiting chauffeur and the lavish car behind him. "Ms. Martinez," the man asked, tipping his hat. "This is a gift from Mr. Jonathan Blackwood. He asked me to personally deliver the vehicle to you. The documents are inside. The keys are yours." Ava's mouth dropped open, words tangling in her mind. A gift. A car like this. This must be a mistake. The chauffeur produced an elegant envelope. Ava opened it, her hands trembling. Inside was a handwritten note. "Dear Ava, thank you for your concern last night. Your honesty meant more to me than you can imagine. I hope this gift makes your life a little easier. Sincerely, Jonathan Blackwood." A swirl of shock, gratitude, and confusion overwhelmed her. This was no casual token. This was a full-blown supercar, worth more than she might make in a decade as a waitress. She glanced around, half expecting hidden cameras or some elaborate prank. Neighbors were peeking out of windows, gawking at the spectacle. What do I do with this?" she asked the chauffeur, her voice barely above a whisper. He simply smiled. "Drive it, Miss Martinez, or keep it however you like. Mr. Blackwood only asked that you continue being the conscientious person you were last night. Congratulations." And with that, the chauffeur excused himself, walked away, and flagged a waiting taxi at the corner. Ava stood there speechless, staring at the glossy black Bentley and the reflection of her wheat-eyed face in the side mirror. The note crinkled in her hand like a secret. She had no idea that this was only the beginning. Though the shock was still fresh, Ava had to get to work. The idea of leaving a brand-new Bentley on the street in her neighborhood gave her chills. But she had no garage. With no time to figure out a long-term plan, she decided she'd park it in a secure lot downtown after her shift. When she arrived at the Orchid Room, the hush that fell over the employees made it obvious the news had spread. A couple of the busboys gave her curious looks. A bartender she'd known for ages winked, offering a low whistle. Whispers about her sudden windfall circulated like wildfire. "Girl, you sure you want to keep working?" teased Nina, a fellow waitress with a mischievous grin. "You could probably sell that Bentley, buy a condo on the water somewhere, and live like a queen." Ava shot her a half-smile. "I love how your mind works, but I still have rent bills and a practical sense. Besides, it was a gift. I'm not sure what to do with it yet." Nina shrugged, but her eyes sparkled with curiosity. "All I know is that if a billionaire gave me a car, I'd be texting him thank you every day until he gave me a house, too." Despite the casual banter, Ava's heart felt heavier than she let on. The gift was incredible, yes, but it was also complicated. Why had Jonathan felt compelled to give her something so exorbitant? She had done the decent thing by warning him. Did he think this was the only way to express gratitude? Or maybe there was a deeper meaning. By the time she took her post for the evening shift, Ava noticed an unfamiliar tension in the usually relaxed ambiance of the Orchid Room. Management had been on edge ever since rumors swirled about an incident with high-profile guests. The entire staff was abuzz with speculation. Something about corporate sabotage, maybe a behind-the-scenes conflict in Jonathan Blackwood's empire. Ava tried to keep her head down, focusing on her tasks. An hour into her shift, she felt an uncomfortable prickle along her spine. She turned from the bar to see Alec stepping into the dining area. His eyes zeroed in on her, holding a predatory glint that made her stomach lurch. He'd come alone this time, no sign of Charles or Jonathan. Ava quickly ducked away to gather her composure. She had never spoken to him directly, and she didn't want to start now. Yet she couldn't ignore the possibility that Alec was here to snoop around or confront her. She took a moment in the hallway to steady her nerves, then re-entered the dining area, determined to keep it professional. Alec was seated at a corner table nursing a cocktail. Ava approached cautiously, as she would any guest. "Good evening," she said politely. "Can I get you anything else to drink or eat?" His eyes flicked up to hers. "I was hoping to see you, actually." Ava swallowed. "Me?" He smiled a slow, cunning grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Waitress from last night, right?" "You were at Jonathan's table, as I recall." She nodded, trying to mask her discomfort. "Yes, sir. Is there something you need?" He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "I heard you had a very interesting morning, Ms. Martinez. A brand new Bentley courtesy of my dear friend, Jonathan Blackwood. He let out a low chuckle. Quite a windfall for overhearing a snippet of conversation, isn't it? Ava kept her voice steady. I'm not sure what you're implying. Oh, I'm sure you do. Alec tapped a finger on the table, his gaze never leaving her face. I'd be careful if I were you. Gifts like that don't come without strings attached. A tremor of nervousness rippled through her. Excuse me, sir. Let me know if you need anything else. She turned to leave, but Alec's voice stabbed the air behind her. What exactly did you tell him, Ava? She froze mid-step. Turning back, she faced Alec with a forced calm. I told him I overheard something you said about controlling shares, and that it might not be in his best interest. His eyes grew darker. You really think you did him a favor? You don't know anything about the bigger picture. Ava stared at him, struggling to hold on to her composure. I know enough to realize you're not who you pretend to be. Alec gave a soft, cold laugh. You poor, naive girl. Jonathan's not the saint you think he is, and I'm not the only threat around him. People in his world play for keeps. He reached into his breast pocket, pulled out a business card, and set it on the table. If you change your mind about which side you're on, call me, he said quietly. Sometimes the one giving the lavish gift is the bigger villain. Without another word, Ava walked away, a storm of conflicting emotions raging inside. She had stepped into a drama far beyond her comfort zone, and now she wasn't sure who she could trust. That night, Ava drove the Bentley for the first time. The purr of its engine felt like a predator she could barely tame, powerful yet smooth, beneath her trembling hands. As she eased onto the highway to find a parking garage, she realized just how surreal her life had become. A few days ago, she was just a hard-working waitress, worrying about tips and rent. Now she was in the middle of a high-stakes corporate feud. The next few days passed in a blur. Jonathan Blackwood didn't appear at the Orchid Room, nor did Alec. Ava tried to function as if everything were normal, but rumors wouldn't stop swirling. Nina made sly jokes about Ava's secret billionaire boyfriend. Management simply frowned but said nothing. The hush of scandal laced the air, and Ava felt as though eyes were constantly tracking her every move. On a rare day off, she decided to visit her mother, who lived in a modest housing complex in Queens. The idea of pulling up in a brand-new Bentley had initially mortified Ava, but her mother had insisted. "Just come by and show it to me," Ms. Martinez said on the phone, excitement shimmering in her voice. "You never know if we'll see another one up close." So Ava made the trek, rolling past rows of tidy apartments until she reached her mother's unit. Ms. Martinez rushed outside in her slippers, her grin stretching from ear to ear. "Mija!" she exclaimed, running a hand over the Bentley's immaculate exterior. "Dios mío, look at this. It's beautiful. Are you going to keep it?" Ava sighed. "I don't know, Mom. It's so expensive to maintain. And it's crazy that someone I barely know gave it to me. Feels too good to be true." Ms. Martinez shrugged. "If he gave it freely, there's no debt." She paused, lowering her voice. "But be careful. Rich people have their own rules." Despite the tension, the afternoon passed pleasantly. Mother and daughter shared old stories, laughter, and a pot of homemade soup. For a few hours, Ava managed to forget about the swirling drama around her. That is until she left. As she was walking to the Bentley, she spotted a sleek black sedan idling at the corner. The car's tinted windows concealed whoever was inside, but Ava felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise. She slipped into the Bentley and started the ignition. The black sedan followed at a cautious distance. Her heart pounded. Was she being paranoid, or was someone tailing her? She tried weaving through the grid of neighborhood streets, taking a different route to see if the car kept up. Sure enough, every time she glanced in the rearview mirror, the sedan reappeared always at the same measured distance. Panic fluttered inside her chest. She switched lanes, turned corners, entered a busier street, and even made an abrupt turn onto a one-way road. The sedan matched her moves, until finally, at a sudden fork in the road, Ava veered left at the last second, leaving the sedan stuck behind traffic going right. Her heart thundered the entire drive back. Reality was setting in. People were watching her, and this conflict was bigger than a single overheard conversation. Maybe Alec was behind this, or more disturbingly, maybe Jonathan had watchers of his own. Ava realized that for better or worse, her life was now deeply entangled in a high-stakes game she didn't fully understand. A week passed before Ava saw Jonathan Blackwood again. This time, he didn't come to the Orchid Room. Instead, he sent an invitation hand-delivered by the same chauffeur to a private charity gala he was hosting at the Plaza Hotel. The invitation was exquisitely designed with gold detailing and calligraphy that spelled out, "Miss Ava Martinez, in recognition of your kindness and discretion, I would be honored if you joined me at the annual Blackwood Foundation Gala this Saturday evening. Yours truly, Jonathan Blackwood." Ava read the lines over and over, her heart conflicted. Attending a gala full of celebrities, philanthropists, and possibly cunning businessmen seemed daunting. However, curiosity and a sense of responsibility propelled her to accept. Maybe this was her chance to learn the truth about Alec's plan and what Jonathan truly wanted. Nina squealed with delight when Ava showed her the invite. A gala at the Plaza Hotel. "Oh, you must be living in a fairy tale now," Nina exclaimed, bounding around Ava's apartment, which was barely large enough for the two of them. "You have to buy a gorgeous dress, and shoes, and your hair." "Please let me do your hair." Despite the swirl of excitement, Ava felt a knot of dread. She'd been followed once already. What if walking into Jonathan's circle put a bigger target on her back? Still, her sense of moral obligation refused to let her ignore Jonathan's invitation. She couldn't pretend that a brand new Bentley and these lingering threats didn't exist. So on Saturday evening, wearing a simple but elegant black gown that Nina helped her pick out, Ava arrived at the plaza. The grand lobby glittered with chandeliers, and waiters circulated with trays of champagne flutes. The city's elite were there in force. She even spotted a few well-known personalities. Bill Gates was rumored to be in one corner, discussing philanthropic tech initiatives. A socialite from a reality show floated by in a swirl of pink tulle. Over in another corner, she thought she recognized Brian Chesky from Airbnb, engaged in a conversation with well-dressed entrepreneurs. She was about to lose herself in the swirl of a world she'd only seen on the front pages of magazines when she felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. "Thank you for coming," Jonathan Blackwood said, offering his arm with a polite smile. He looked every bit the polished magnate dressed in a tailored tuxedo, his hair perfectly styled. "May I escort you inside?" Ava forced a smile. "Of course. Thank you for inviting me." They walked into the ballroom together, a spectacle of graceful string music and glittering lights. Jonathan guided Ava toward a quieter corner with tall windows overlooking Central Park. Her heart drummed in her chest, an echo of the grandeur and tension swirling around her. "I realize this may feel overwhelming," Jonathan said, his voice gentle. "I wanted to thank you again for warning me." It's because of your timely information that I avoided transferring controlling shares to Alec and Charles's new venture. They nearly had me convinced it was a beneficial partnership. Ava let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. So it was true they planned to trap you in a bad deal. He nodded. Yes, though the specifics are still unraveling. They were trying to funnel money through shell companies to wrest control away from me. You saved me, Ava. She swallowed. I don't know what to say. I'm glad I helped, but I wish it hadn't put me in the middle of all this. Someone's been following me. At that, Jonathan's eyes grew sharp with concern. Following you? She recounted the incident with the black sedan. Jonathan listened intently, a thoughtful frown etching lines in his usually poised face. I had you checked on, but just to ensure your safety. That wasn't my doing. A swirl of unease coiled in Ava's gut. Then Jonathan looked out at the glittering city lights. Alec has many connections. Or it could be other powerful figures who might think you have more information than you do. In my world, secrets are currency. A tremor of anxiety coursed through Ava. I never asked for any of this. Jonathan gently placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I know. Let me fix this situation. Once it's resolved, if you want no further part of it, you have my word, you can walk away, car or no car. You deserve peace. The sincerity in his eyes eased the dread in her chest. But before she could reply, the sound of raised voices drew their attention across the ballroom. Standing near the buffet tables was Alec wearing a smug expression, accompanied by Charles and two other men in suits. Their presence caused an instant ripple of unease among the guests. Jonathan tensed, and Ava could see how his entire demeanor hardened, like a king rising to defend his castle. Alec strolled over, ignoring the rising tension around them. Jonathan, my friend, he said, loudly enough for a few bystanders to overhear. I'm hurt I didn't get an invitation. Jonathan kept his composure. I had no reason to invite you after last week's events, but you seem to have found your way in regardless. Alec's eyes flicked to Ava, a twisted smile tugging at his lips. Miss Martinez, looking lovely tonight, enjoying your new lifestyle. I hope Ava felt her cheeks burn, but she refused to lower her gaze. She stood straighter, her voice quiet but firm. It's a simple courtesy from a grateful friend. Nothing more. Alec's lips curled as if he knew some hidden truth. Jonathan, you really do pick strange bedfellows. First me, and now a waitress who can apparently be bought with a Bentley. Jonathan stepped forward, anger flaring behind his eyes. You're overstepping, Alec. Oh, am I? Alec raised his voice, drawing even more attention. We were supposed to be partners, Jonathan. But you let a waitress's eavesdropping drive a wedge between us. Now you've closed off a deal that would have yielded massive returns. And for what? Some misguided sense of loyalty to staff. Jonathan breathed in, clearly wrestling with a response. Ava could see how precarious this confrontation was. Wealthy guests were watching scandalized, and the tension was thick enough to slice. Then Alec delivered a blow that cut through the air. Maybe I should tell everyone here how your prized Blackwood Foundation is running out of funds. How some of the biggest donors are pulling out because they don't trust your leadership. Or better yet, how certain philanthropic ventures you brag about are nothing but marketing spin to cover your real estate expansions. Murmurs erupted from the onlookers. Jonathan's eyes blazed, but he maintained a steady calm. That's enough, Alec. If you have concerns about the Foundation's finances, you can address them privately instead of humiliating yourself publicly. Alec laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. You think I'm the one humiliating myself? You're the one with illusions of grandeur. You've made enemies in your quest for power, people who'd like nothing better than to see you fall. With that, Alec and his entourage turned and swept out of the ballroom, leaving a wave of uneasy chatter behind them. Jonathan exhaled slowly. My apologies, he said to Ava under his breath. You didn't deserve to be dragged into this spectacle. Her hand trembled at her side. He's right, though, isn't he? You do have enemies, and you are short on funds for the foundation. Jonathan gave a grave nod. Yes, some of our philanthropic efforts are suffering due to certain market forces. But we're far from collapsing. Ava folded her arms, suddenly uncertain. You need help, don't you? The truth is, I don't want to be in danger because I overheard something. But I feel I can't just walk away. He gave her a gentle look. You owe me nothing. I promise. I'll handle Alec. I just wanted to show you a glimpse of my world, not plunge you into its hazards. But a seed of resolution had already taken root within Ava. She had opened this can of worms by warning him. Maybe now she had a responsibility to see it through. When Ava arrived home from the gala, she found a letter slipped under her door. No return address, just a plain envelope with her name typed on the front. She opened it, her nerves tingling. Careful who you trust. Billionaires don't give without expecting bigger returns. Alec is not the only snake. The waitress is becoming the main course. Her stomach clenched at the ominous message. She considered calling the police, but what would she say? That she was being threatened by unknown parties over a corporate sabotage fiasco. The authorities would likely dismiss her unless something more tangible happened. Over the next few days, Ava found herself in a relentless tug-of-war between Jonathan's reassurances and Alec's hints that Jonathan was the real villain. A small part of her even wondered if Alec's warning held any truth. Was Jonathan's generosity just a way to ensure her silence or loyalty? Even so, Jonathan made good on his promise to keep her safe, hiring a discreet security detail that trailed her at a non-intrusive distance. The black sedan that once followed her was never seen again, though Ava couldn't be sure if that was Jonathan's doing or just a lull in the cat-and-mouse game. In the meantime, tension in the city's upper echelons grew. Newspapers ran speculative pieces about Jonathan's business dealings. The philanthropic community murmured about whether Blackwood's foundation would sink or swim. Rumors suggested that Alec and his group were waiting for the perfect moment to strike again, aiming to discredit Jonathan or leverage him into a corner. Ava's own role in the drama became murkier each day. She tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, working her shifts at the Orchid Room, politely declining interview requests from tabloids that somehow learned about the billionaire's extravagant gift to a waitress. She even tried to keep in touch with her mother, who was increasingly worried about Ava's safety. One evening, Ava received a call from a blocked number. Against her better judgment, she picked up. You really think you can play both sides? Alec's voice rasped through the phone. Ava's heart accelerated. Leave me alone. He gave a quiet chuckle. That's not possible now. You're too important to ignore. But you might find we're not so different, you and I. We just want security and a slice of the good life. I can offer you more than a car, Ava. She felt a surge of anger. I'm not for sale. Everyone's for sale. Alec said, a smile in his voice. Jonathan's already proven that. Let me be clear. If Jonathan goes down, the blowback will hit you too. His enemies will want to silence anyone who knows anything about his operations. Ava swallowed a lump in her throat. That doesn't mean I have to be your pawn. I can handle my own life. Brave words for a waitress, Alec retorted. But the storms that are coming will wash away the unprepared. If you don't want to be left stranded, you know how to reach me. He hung up, leaving Ava feeling as though the walls around her were closing in. She was trapped between two powerful forces, each capable of shattering her life in different ways. What was the truth? Who was truly in the right? 2 weeks after the gala, Jonathan asked Ava to meet him at one of his properties, a development site on the East River. She hesitated, but curiosity and an odd sense of loyalty nudged her to go. The construction area was enormous. Skeletal frameworks of future skyscrapers loomed overhead, while the cacophony of drills and machinery echoed across the water. She found Jonathan near a temporary office set up on the site. He was talking to a group of engineers pointing at large-scale blueprints. When he saw Ava, his face lit up in a warm smile, a stark contrast to the grit and noise around them. "Thank you for coming," he said, ushering her inside the office where it was quieter. Large windows overlooked the East River, where cargo ships glided along the water. The office smelled of fresh lumber and coffee. Jonathan gestured for her to sit. "I wanted you to see a piece of what my company does, real projects that create jobs and homes. It's not all about glitzy galas and fancy restaurants." Ava gazed at the sprawling development. "It's impressive." He sank into a chair across from her, the tension in his posture evident. "I've been weighing the best course of action regarding Alec. He's not merely a disgruntled partner. He's allied with some very dangerous individuals. I have reason to believe they have ties to organized crime, specifically in money laundering and property scams." A chill raced down Ava's spine. "So you think he's using your real estate dealings to funnel illegal money?" Jonathan nodded gravely. "That's what I suspect. It would explain why they were so determined to obtain controlling shares of my company. They needed a legitimate facade." Ava swallowed. "Why are you telling me all this?" "I'm just—" He leaned forward, his gaze earnest. "You're someone who risked your own peace to warn me. That kind of loyalty is priceless. I'm telling you because I trust you, and because it's fair that you know the risks you face." Ava looked away, feeling the weight of this revelation. "So what happens next?" "That depends on how far Alec and his partners are willing to go," Jonathan replied. "I have my legal team and investigators working quietly, but I'm also aware that if Alec feels cornered, he might lash out. I want you to be safe, Ava." His expression softened. "Let me hire a better security detail for you. Let me put you up in a place that's not so easy to track." She shook her head, though she felt torn. "I can't just walk away from my life. My job, my mum, everything." "I understand. But at least let me help you safeguard those pieces of your life," Jonathan urged. "I don't want you to suffer because you did the right thing." A long silence hung in the air. Outside the windows, the sun reflected on the rippling water, an illusion of serenity in contrast to the storm brewing in their lives. Finally, Ava nodded. "All right. But I don't want any more gifts that make me feel indebted. It's a security measure, nothing more." Jonathan offered a slight smile of relief. "Deal." That same evening, Ava was closing up at the Orchid Room when the power abruptly went out. The dining area was draped in darkness, illuminated only by the flicker of emergency lights. Most of the customers had left for the night, leaving a skeleton crew behind. Ava's phone vibrated in her pocket. She pulled it out to see a text from an unknown number. "Leave now. They're coming." Her heart hammered. Could this be another one of Alec's twisted messages? She gathered her things, deciding it was best to exit through the staff door. But as soon as she stepped into the dimly lit corridor, she heard footsteps behind her. A sinking feeling clenched her gut. She glanced over her shoulder to see two men wearing dark clothing hats pulled low over their eyes. They quickened their pace. Ava's fight-or-flight instinct kicked in. She sprinted down the corridor, turning corners with adrenaline-fueled speed. The men chased her through the labyrinth of the restaurant's back area. Finally, she spotted a side exit that led to the alley. She pushed the door open, her breath ragged. Night swallowed her as she dashed into the alley, but the men were close behind. She fumbled for her keys. Maybe she could reach the Bentley in time. But the men closed in, blocking her route. Heart pounding, she turned to face them. Fear surging like a trapped animal's last stand. Before she could scream, a pair of headlights illuminated the alley. A sleek SUV roared in, screeching to a halt. The passenger door flew open, and a voice yelled, "Get in!" Ava didn't hesitate. She dashed for the SUV and flung herself inside. The vehicle sped off, leaving the two assailants behind. Only after several blocks did she manage to steady her breath enough to look at the driver. It was a tall woman in a black blazer, her hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun. She glanced at Ava through the rearview mirror. "Jonathan sent us to keep an eye on you. Good thing we did." Ava's pulse still thundered. Who were those men? The driver shook her head. No idea, but they clearly weren't friendly. "We'll get you somewhere safe. Mr. Blackwood wants to see you." Trembling, Ava realized that her life had just been saved by the very security detail Jonathan insisted on. There was no going back to normal now. She was in the center of a war. They brought Ava to a penthouse in a gated high-rise that Jonathan owned. The building overlooked the Manhattan skyline, a panoramic sweep of glittering lights. Everything about the penthouse screamed luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows, marble floors, tasteful modern furniture. The driver introduced herself as Caroline, head of Jonathan's personal security team, and left Ava in the capable hands of another guard who escorted her upstairs. Waiting in the living room was Jonathan, pacing anxiously. When he saw Ava, relief washed over his face. "Thank God you're safe." She tried to muster a smile, but it came out strained. "Those men?" "Who sent them?" Jonathan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I've been receiving threats too. Whatever Alec is doing, he's accelerating. I suspect they wanted to intimidate you, or worse." Ava sank onto a plush couch, her nerves shattered. "This is insane. Why can't we involve the police?" "We can. But everything's still based on speculation of who's behind it," Jonathan said. "Alec covers his tracks well. My team has been compiling evidence, but it's not enough to guarantee convictions. Involving the police too soon could tip him off, making him more dangerous." Ava stared at the city lights outside, feeling small. So what now? Jonathan sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "I want you to stay here for a while. It's the safest place I know. If you still want to see your mother, we can arrange secure transport, or I can bring her here. I won't force you to do anything, but please, for your safety, consider it." Anxieties clashed in her mind. She didn't want to uproot her life, but neither could she ignore the danger. The memory of the men chasing her was too raw, too terrifying. After several moments of silence, she nodded. "Fine. Temporarily." Jonathan let out a breath. "Thank you. I'm sorry you're involved in all this. I never wanted you to be in harm's way." His sincerity touched her, stirring a complicated blend of gratitude and frustration. Part of her still wondered if she could truly trust him, but for now, She had no safer option. Days turned into a week. Ava lived in the penthouse, attempting to keep a semblance of routine. She called her mother daily to assure her she was safe. She spoke with Nina, who was equally worried. The orchid room gave her some time off, partly out of concern, and partly because they didn't want trouble on their premises. Jonathan visited often, sharing news of the investigation and bringing her groceries or little comforts to make her feel less like a prisoner. As they spent more time together, Ava glimpsed facets of Jonathan's life that most people never saw. He'd grown up in a modest family, but had skyrocketed to success through a combination of shrewd investments and unwavering ambition. He was fiercely protective of those he cared about, family employees, philanthropic causes, and yet the walls he'd built around himself were unmistakable. One afternoon he showed Ava around the penthouse gardens, meticulously landscaped with exotic plants. The conversation turned personal. She asked him how he felt about the money and power that shaped his life. Jonathan paused under the shade of a potted palm. "Power isn't inherently bad," he said quietly. "It's what you do with it that matters. I've tried to use mine to build, to innovate, to help people. But I'm not naive enough to think money can't corrupt. It's a double-edged sword." Ava studied him. "You almost sound like you resent it." He gave a rueful laugh. "Sometimes, because people like Alec see me as a ticket to their own greedy aspirations, and people on the outside see me as a threat or a mark. It's hard to know who to trust." He glanced at her, his eyes softening. "You're one of the few people who's done something for me without expecting a payday." A flush warmed her cheeks. They stood there, an unspoken tension humming in the air like static. She couldn't deny the pull growing between them, a strange tentative bond formed by crisis and trust. But every time they seemed to grow closer, the looming threat cast a shadow. Caroline, the head of security, orchestrated a plan to lure Alec's men into making a mistake. They arranged for Jonathan to attend a high-profile real estate conference, announcing publicly that he'd be unveiling a major partnership. The aim was to flush out Alec's allies, who might try to sabotage or confront Jonathan. Ava watched from the penthouse as the drama unfolded. Jonathan dressed in his usual polished manner, accompanied by a robust security team. Meanwhile, Caroline monitored everything via a makeshift command center in the penthouse's study, keeping tabs on the event through security cameras and a direct communications line. Hours ticked by with minimal updates. Finally, at around midnight, Caroline got a call. She beckoned Ava over, pressing the phone's speaker button. Jonathan's voice crackled through. "Caroline, we have a situation." "What happened?" Caroline asked calmly. "Alec's men are here, but they're not making a move on me. They're searching for a woman they believe is with me." He paused. "They think it's Ava." A chill crept over Ava. Caroline's expression remained stoic. "We're on alert." "Anything else?" "Yes. They're planning something bigger." I overheard them mention blackmail material and using it at the perfect time. I suspect they want to force my hand in signing away certain assets. Caroline glanced at Ava. "Understood. We'll keep Ava safe here. Do you need us to dispatch additional backup?" Jonathan hesitated. "No. I'm leaving the conference. I'll head back. Just be ready. Alec might try to corner us soon." The call ended, leaving an uneasy hush in the study. Jonathan returned to the penthouse around 1 a.m. with a grim expression. He convened with Caroline and the rest of the security team in the living room. Ava sat on the couch, feeling the tension coil around them. "Alec's men are unraveling," Jonathan explained. "I think they realize their time is running out. Word is the authorities are sniffing around. If we can gather solid evidence linking them to illegal offshore accounts or money laundering, they'll be done. Caroline nodded. We've been working on tracking some shell company transactions. A contact in the financial sector said there's suspicious movement in accounts tied to Charles and Alec. Jonathan turned to Ava. I'm sorry to drag you into a bigger showdown, but it might come to that. They could try one last desperate move. I want you to stay here. Don't open the door for anyone but Caroline or me. Ava's throat felt tight, but she nodded. I understand. Just be careful. That night she tried to sleep, but insomnia gnawed at her. She paced the penthouse, the city lights flickering like distant stars. Just after 3 a.m., her phone buzzed. She checked the screen, a text from Nina, but the words made her blood run cold. Your mum's place was broken into. She's okay, but she's shaken up. Where are you? Ava's heart hammered. She hurried to find Caroline, who was dozing in a chair near the penthouse's entrance. Caroline, Ava hissed urgently. My mum's apartment was broken into. Caroline jolted awake, her eyes instantly alert. Is she hurt? Nina says she's fine, but scared. I have to go to her. Caroline frowned. Wait here. I'll get a team. Within minutes, 2 armed guards and Caroline were escorting Ava into a secure SUV, speeding through the city streets toward her mother's apartment complex in Queens. When they arrived, the front door to Miss Martinez's unit was ajar. The wood splintered. Police lights flashed across the courtyard, and neighbors peered from their doors. Ava rushed inside, tears burning her eyes. She found her mother sitting on the couch, a policeman standing nearby asking questions. Her mother's eyes lit with relief upon seeing Ava. Thank God you're safe, mija, Ms. Martinez cried, pulling Ava into a trembling hug. They tore the place apart, demanded to know where you were. Ava held her mother close, her mind spinning. Alec's men must have come here, searching for her. She stroked her mother's hair and tried to reassure her. Caroline spoke with the police, who looked suspiciously at the armed guards, but accepted Caroline's explanations about corporate threats. Ms. Martinez refused to leave her home, insisting she'd be fine with a new lock. Ava's protests fell on deaf ears. Her mother was too proud to abandon her apartment. Finally, they struck a compromise. Caroline's security team would station someone outside Ms. Martinez's door 24/7, and Ms. Martinez could press charges if the intruders were identified. On the drive back, Ava's emotions boiled. Fear, anger, guilt. She couldn't stand that her mother had been targeted. She turned to Caroline. This ends tonight. I'm not hiding anymore. Caroline's eyes flicked to her in the rearview mirror. Jonathan won't like that. His priority is keeping you safe. Ava set her jaw. I appreciate that, but I need to do something. Alec is going after my family now. When they got back to the penthouse, Ava was determined to confront Jonathan. However, a surprise waited at the door. Alec himself stood in the hallway, flanked by 2 of his henchmen, while Jonathan and his security team faced him. Tension crackled in the air like an electrical storm about to erupt. Alec's gaze snapped to Ava as she emerged from the elevator. A triumphant, twisted smile crossed his face. Speak of the devil. Jonathan's security had their hands on their weapons, but Alec held up a phone. Gentlemen, stand down. One wrong move, and my friends outside might do something unfortunate. He pressed the screen of his phone, revealing a live feed of men in a black van parked near Ms. Martinez's building, clearly ready to carry out threats. Ava's heart seized. Alec aimed a smug glance at Jonathan. "If you want the lovely Miss Martinez and her mother to remain unharmed, we're going to talk privately." Jonathan's jaw clenched, but he held up a hand to keep his security from attacking. "Let's go inside." The group entered the penthouse. Alec's henchman stood guard near the door, while Alec sauntered into the living room, pausing to admire the lavish setting. "Nice place, Jonathan. But it's missing one thing: freedom from your illusions." Ava clenched her fists. "You broke into my mother's home. She had nothing to do with any of this." Alec's gaze flicked to her, cold and emotionless. "Collateral. Blame Jonathan." He forced my hand. Jonathan stepped between them. "What do you want?" "Alec." Alec pulled out a folder from inside his jacket. He tossed it onto the coffee table. "Sign over the controlling shares of your real estate development branch. My associates will see to it that your mother, Ms. Martinez, remains safe. Refuse and, well, you can imagine the rest." Jonathan's expression tightened in rage. "You're blackmailing me with threats of harming Ava's mother." Alec shrugged. "I'm an opportunist. You forced this scenario when you cut me out." A storm of fury rolled through Ava. Before she could speak, Caroline discreetly tapped her phone, indicating she was sending a silent alert to their off-site security detail. They just needed to stall until backup arrived. Jonathan exhaled, picking up the folder. "And if I sign this, you'll leave Ava and her mother alone. You'll vanish." "Of course," Alec said, smirking. "We'll vanish. You can go on playing benevolent billionaire while I reap the rewards of my cunning." Tension soared as Jonathan flipped through the pages. Ava's mind raced. Could Jonathan sacrifice a large portion of his empire just to protect her and her mother? She closed her eyes, recalling the gravity of the situation. Alec was a man entangled in criminal networks, capable of anything. She suddenly realized that if Jonathan signed, Alec would have unlimited control over developments that could launder dirty money or exploit countless people. Could she let that happen? Trembling, Ava spoke up. "Don't sign it," she said quietly, stepping beside Jonathan. Alec laughed. "Touching. You want him to choose your mother's life over a piece of paper?" She held her ground, lips pressed tight. "If we sign, you'll just keep demanding more. You won't stop until you've taken everything." Alec's grin twisted. "Your mother's safety, Miss Martinez. That's all I'm offering." Jonathan hesitated, the pen hovering over the contract. Just then the sound of footsteps thundered in the hallway. A swarm of security personnel and plainclothes police officers, guided by Caroline's alert, burst into the penthouse, guns drawn. Alec's henchmen raised their weapons, but were quickly disarmed by the onslaught. Pandemonium erupted. Alec lunged for Ava, attempting to use her as a shield, but Jonathan tackled him with surprising force. They crashed to the floor, the contract fluttering in the air. Alec spat curses, struggling beneath Jonathan's grip, but the security team pinned him down. Within seconds, the men outside Ms. Martinez's apartment were also neutralized, a coordinated takedown orchestrated by Caroline's team, who had been monitoring the van through video surveillance. Police soon confirmed that Ms. Martinez was safe, arresting the men who threatened her. Handcuffed and furious, Alec glared at Jonathan. "You won't be able to prove anything," he snarled. "I'll be out on bail by tomorrow." Jonathan rose to his feet, straightening his suit. "You might, but it'll be a short-lived victory. We've compiled enough evidence to bury you and your associates. Money laundering, extortion, conspiracy to commit fraud. Take your pick." Alec's face fell, replaced by desperation. He was hauled away by the police, spewing empty threats and pleas. As the chaos settled, Ava leaned against the wall, relief and shock making her knees weak. Jonathan hurried to her side, steadying her with gentle hands. "You're safe now," he whispered, holding her gaze. "It's over." Ava's heart still hammered, but she felt an overwhelming sense of release. After so many weeks of fear and uncertainty, the threat had finally been quelled. The fallout was swift. Headlines reported the dramatic arrest of Alec and his cronies, connecting them to a broader criminal network. Jonathan, in a public statement, expressed relief that justice was being served. The fiasco elevated his public persona from distant magnate to somewhat of a heroic figure, someone who rooted out corruption within his own circle. As for Ava, she resumed life with a newfound sense of security and purpose. Jonathan insisted she keep the Bentley, though he helped her set up a more practical arrangement, including a safe parking facility and maintenance plan. She continued working at the Orchid Room, but management gave her a more flexible schedule, acknowledging the stress she'd endured. The media attention eventually tapered off, allowing her to slip back into relative anonymity. But some changes were inevitable. Ava had glimpsed a world she once believed was far out of her reach. She'd walked among billionaires, faced criminals, and stood her ground. As the dust settled, an unexpected sense of empowerment took root in her. Jonathan and Ava stayed in touch. Their bond had transcended the initial dynamic of Billionaire and Waitress. Sometimes they'd meet for quiet dinners. Nothing fancy, just the two of them, discussing the complexities of life, trust, and second chances. Jonathan confided that he'd resolved the foundation's financial issues thanks to new partnerships with reputable donors, and that he was now more vigilant about who he allowed into his circle. "Thank you for everything," he told her one evening as they dined in a low-key bistro in the East Village. "You saved me from a terrible partnership, and you reminded me what genuine integrity looks like." Ava smiled gently. "I just did what I thought was right, but I'm glad we both made it through." He offered a faint chuckle. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't warned me that night?" She stared at him, her gaze filled with both warmth and lingering awe. "I'd probably still be a waitress, serving a doomed man. But that's not our story. Their story instead was one of unexpected courage and alliances forged in the crucible of danger. And as far as Ava was concerned, it was only just beginning. Our story began with a simple act of concern, a waitress overhearing a risky conversation and warning the billionaire she believed was in danger. Little did Ava Martinez know that her world would be turned upside down by corporate conspiracies, looming threats, and hidden loyalties. Yet through every twist she found a reserve of courage she never knew she had, forging a rare bond with the elusive Jonathan Blackwood. Though the shadows of betrayal nearly consumed them, Ava's steadfast honesty and Jonathan's resolve brought the truth to light. Alec's plot was uncovered, and the forces seeking to manipulate Jonathan's empire were brought to justice. Yet the real triumph lay in the unshakable trust and friendship that rose from chaos. If you enjoyed this tale of loyalty, danger, and redemption, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories that illuminate the power of doing what's right, even when it's risky. Thank you for watching.